Hey guys, I hope you're all doing well. I've created a project here using React Redux and I'm using Material UI for React, which will let us use these components. So what I've created here is a basketball league application, and this is just purely front end. So let me go ahead and give you guys a little demo of it. So here is a table of the player, the team that the player belongs to, their number and position. Now here's a drop down of all the teams, so it's empty right now. So let's go ahead and add one. So here's the form. So I'm going to say Chicago Bulls. Let's do Michael Jordan, 23, shooting guard. And then I can add players, or I can not. I can just add only one. So a minimum requirement is to add at least one player to a team. That's why this X button is grayed out. And here you can remove them. So I'm going to say save team. So he's been added to this table. So you can click on Chicago Bulls. You can edit the team. You can add more players, or you can remove them, or you can change the fields in the inputs. So I'm going to add one more team here. I'm going to do Los Angeles Lakers. Let's do LeBron James, 23. And then I'm going to add one more. Anthony Davis. I don't know his jersey number, so I'm just going to do 24. And I believe power forward. I'm going to save the team. Okay, so now you can see the players and what teams they belong to. Now let's say I want to filter it by just the team. So if I click on the Bulls, I'll see the players that only belong to the Chicago Bulls. Same with the Lakers. And then if I want to go back, I can just see all of them. So that's the project we're going to build here. And I'll show you guys how to get started in Visual Studio Code. So let's hop right in. Alright guys, so I have Visual Studio Code open here on the right, and then I just have our demo project open. So I have created a current project folder in my desktop, and I just opened that up. So first thing we're gonna do is install all the packages that we need. So we're gonna create our React app here. So we're gonna write in this directory. We're gonna say npx create React app dot, and it should create this right in the directory. And I'm just gonna skip this ahead because this might take a couple minutes. Alright, so we have our React project installed here. Let's go ahead and install our other packages that we need. So we need Redux, and let's install these all at once. We can do Redux, React Redux, we need Material UI, and then we need, we're going to install the Redux DevTools extension so that you guys can see how our state is being changed and what's being stored in our state. So Redux DevTools extensions. All right, we'll let that install. Okay, I think it's just DevTool extension. Yep, that should work. Okay, and now we have our packages installed. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to really quick uninstall the Redux DevTool extension, because I don't want it as a dependency. I want it as a dev dependency. Alright, so let's install this as a dev dependency, and this is a shortcut hand that we can do for that. So we're going to do Redux dev, DevTools extension. And now you guys can see we have React, React Redux, Redux, and Material UI. And then once this DevTools is installed, so we can go ahead and close this now. Let's go ahead. The first thing what we're going to do is we're going to set up React and Redux together. All right, so I'm going to actually delete all this boilerplate. Okay, so this is our starting point. I'm even going to delete app.js. We don't need any of that. I'm going to start from scratch. Okay, and let's leave that. So let's set up our directories here. So I'm going to have our components directory. I'm going to, this is for our React side. And then I'm going to set up the directories for our Redux as well. So I'm going to have a store directory. And then I'm also going to have a containers directory. Okay, and I'll explain everything as we go along. If you guys don't have much experience with React Redux together, I do have a intro tutorial on how to, how they work together and how to get them set up if you want that more in detail. All right, so first thing we want to do is create a component that our app will enter. So it's going to be, I'm just going to do main.jsx, and then I'm just going to import React. And then I'm going to call this main. All right, export default. Okay, cool. So now what we need to do to get Redux created is in our store directory, we need to create a store.js file. So we're going to do store.js. All right, so in here, we're going to import a couple things from the Redux library. We're going to import the create store and then the combine reducers function, because we're going to have multiple reducers in our store for this project. And then also I'm going to show you how to set up the DevTools extension. So we're going to import from the Redux DevTools. And I believe it's composed with DevTools. And so here is where we usually import our reducers, but we don't have any created. So we'll create that here in a little bit. So I'm going to just say export default, create store. And we don't have any reducers. So I'm just going to leave that empty for now. And then we'll come back to this later. Oh. All right. So in our index.js, let's get our app running. I am going to, instead of app, we're going to go into components, main, and import main. And this will actually all change in a little bit because we're going to be using Redux to drive our data down to our components. But I just want to get our localhost started. So I'm going to do npm start so that you guys can probably see the changes as we go along in our browser. Alrighty. So now, next thing we want to do is in our index.js, let's go ahead. Oh, okay. So right now, main is not returning anything. Let me just fix that. Let's do this. Let's do hello world. All right. So first thing we want to do is let's create out everything we need for the Redux so that we can pass it into our components. All right, so it starts here. So let's go in and let's see what we have to do here. So what we have to do is import a couple things. I'm going to import from the React Redux library now. And here I'm going to import the provider. Okay, and then in here I'm going to say provider. And then main will go inside the provider. And then here we're going to pass the store. So we're going to import the store. Let me see, make sure that I export. Yep, I exported it. So I'm going to say import store from, let's see, store, that's /store. All right, so we have that. And okay, cool. So in here in our store.js, so since we don't have any reducer set up, let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to set up the function here. So I'm going to say const root reducer equals combine reducers. It's going to be an object. Okay. And I'm going to just pass this into our root reducer. And then I'm going to also pass in here the compose with DevTools in function. Okay, call that function there. All right, so I'm going to create a couple directories inside the store called reducers, action types, and then actions. Okay, so what we're going to do is, now it's hard to kind of figure out what, how you want the reducers to be set up first. So it's kind of easier to actually create the components and then see what data needs to be driven down and set up in the Redux store. So I'm going to let's go ahead and create this. Okay, and then we'll drive the data down. We'll add functionality so that we can create data. And then we'll come back and then, create our reducers and stuff. And let's see if the DevTools is actually working. Okay, cool. It actually is. There's no state. Oh, sorry. This is the existing one. Let's see if it's working here. So it is working. And hold on, let me refresh this. See if that. Yeah, so it is working. There's no state currently. So once we get state added, we will come back to this and you guys can see how that works. All right, so for our component here in our main.jsx, so a couple things. So we're going to create a component for this area with the team dropdown and then the add button and then just the table itself. So let's go ahead and do the table itself. So I'm going to create a new file here called player table.jsx. And the material UI documentation is pretty good with its components. So I was able to, pick up everything from the documentation here for the table. And we're just going to be using a basic table here. Okay, so let's import React, create our function, and then export this. Okay, so what is going to be going inside of our table? So we're going to obviously import that into our main.jsx. So, okay, so let's just start here. I want to be able to show you guys this as we go along. So what I'm going to do here is just import player table. And these things will change probably because we're going to probably create containers when we set up our Redux store so that we can pass our data directly into the container from the Redux store and then just call that container here. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So we're going to do import from player table. Okay. And I'm going to put this all inside a container. So I'm going to import from the material UI library. So we can do add material. Do I not have it installed? Let me see 1 second. I do have material UI installed, but why is it not auto? Strange. Okay, let's give that a try and let's make sure that works. Material UI core. And then we're going to import the container. I wonder if that... Okay, yeah, material UI core not found. Interesting. Okay, but I have it installed. I don't have material UI core installed. Let me install that real fast. So it's material UI, I believe, /core. Yeah, there it is. Oh. Okay, it probably is not the right. Let me get that. Let's get started. Installation. You need the @ symbol. So now let's run our localhost. Alrighty, so it should work now. And what I'm going to do here in our main is I'm going to wrap everything around inside the container. So I'm going to call the container here. Okay, so everything will be going inside the container, and cool. So now I'm going to just call the player table here. Okay, it doesn't return anything. All right, so what's going to be inside our player table? So now we're going to set up our table here. So we're going to import quite a bit of stuff from Material UI. All right, so first thing we're going to do is import the table body, table cell, table container, table head, table row, and then a couple other things. This is a paper, and then with styles. And this will all make sense in just a moment why we need this. First thing we're going to do is let's create this empty state table. All right. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say table row. Sorry, we're going to need the container first. Table container. And that's all going to be wrapped under paper. Okay. Paper is just a type of, if you see here, styling, I believe. If you see here, yeah, it's just a type of styling. And I've done some, I wanted to kind of modify it, so I've created the wrapper for it. So I'm going to do elevation 0, and then variant, I want it outlined. Okay. And then I'm going to get the table container now. And then now I want to create the empty state. So the empty state will be table row. And then inside the table row will be the table cell. And then I'm going to just say no data. Okay, so you guys can see that we have something here. And we don't have any actual headers. So we need to create the headers. I'm going to come up here. And then I'm going to say, and first of all, I didn't wrap any of this inside the table. Sorry guys, I'm kind of all over the place for some reason. Okay. Let's do that. And then table head. All right. And then I'm going to do, so I'm going to copy the table row here. Sorry. Not in there. I'm going to create a different table row. This will contain all of the headers that we have. So we have player, team, and number and position. All right, so I'm going to do table cell, and then I'm going to put player here. And I'm going to just copy this 4 times. Yeah, I did shift alt down, and it was able to copy that. All right, I'm going to do team, number, position. All right, so now we have that. All right, and now I want to push this all down. If you see here, I have it pushed down. And the way you can push it down is we need to add styling to our, add classes to our container. So the way you can do that is that Material UI makes it really easy to add styling to their components. So we import this make styles function, and we just create a variable here called use styles, and then we call setup make styles, pass in a arrow function here. Okay, and this is going to be an object. It's just going to return an object of all the styles we create, all the class names. So I'm just going to create a class name container, and I'm going to set a margin top of 100, and I believe that translates to 100 pixels. And then we're going to set some padding here to 25 pixels top and bottom, and 20 pixels left and right. And then I'm going to also set the background color to a white. All right, so we're going to do background color, because we're going to change the background color of the actual body soon. So make it more grayish. All right, so in the easiest, it's pretty simple how you can just call this. So you can just say const use styles equals use styles, and you just call the function. I'm just going to use some object destructuring because it just makes it easier. All right, and then here we're going to pass in class name, and then I'm going to just say container, and let's see how that looks. Okay, cool. So it pushed it down, and let's go ahead and change the in the index.css, we can change the background color. Let's see right here. Oh, okay. So we're going to add the background color, and let's just make it a grayish. Okay. So it's going to look like something like this. All right. So back to the table. So this, I know in this, I showed you in the intro that it was to the left, but I'm going to actually center it because that looks way better. So the way we can center it is pretty simple. Let me show you how we can do that. So here, all we need to do is just do scope, pass in row, call span, 4. So now the call span is how many columns will it span. So it's going to span the 4 columns. And then here, we're just going to do inline styling. We're going to just do text align, center. And then it should be centered. Yep, cool. So it looks something like that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is now we need to create the this thing right here, the drop down and then the button. So that'll be its own little component as well. So I'm going to create a new component here called team select.jsx, import React, and then let's import what we need from the material UI library. So we're going to import the select component, input label. We're going to import form control for the input, and then grid, and button. One more is the make styles. Okay. And then let's create our function. Export this. Okay. Let's just add a couple of changes in here, and then we'll include it in our main component. So we're going to be using the grid layout here to, keep it centered and in the middle. Yeah. So I'm going to hit return. I'm going to add return here. And we're going to have a grid. And this is going to act as our container. Okay. And then we're going to justify this to the center. Okay, so I'm going inside this grid, I'm going to have another grid. And inside this grid, we're going to have a form control. This is for our input, which is the select. We're going to include the label in the select. And in the form control, first thing we're going to have is the input label. Inside the input label, we're going to just say team. All right. And then we're going to have a select. Okay, so the select component takes a couple props. So we're going to use the native one. We're going to give this a label ID. let's say team label select. And then we'll have an onChange function. So since we don't have a function yet, we'll create one, and then it'll also have a value. Right now I'm just going to have empty string, but I don't want to set that yet. When we start adding our state, we'll set that up. And then we're simply going to just have our options. Okay, so option here. The first option will be empty string. And then, as you guys saw here, we had a drop down with the teams that we created. So for now, this ideally would be looped through the data that we keep in our store. So I'm just going to keep it as empty for now, and then we'll add options dynamically. Okay, so now we have something to show here. So let's go ahead and include this component inside of our main. Let's do it right above the table. Team select. Let's see. All right, so that looks pretty horrible. All right, we probably need to fix up some things here. We need to add a min width to our form control. So we're just going to use that make styles again and just create a couple of classes for each of these. We're going to need them for each of these components. Okay, so we're going to say team form control, and we're going to give this a min width. Let's do 120. And then come in here and then say object destructuring equal to use styles. Get team form control. You know, I'm going to call this, a better name for this would be the team select form control. So we know exactly what it is for. Okay. And we're going to say class name here is team select. Okay, cool. That looks much better. And then looks like we need a margin bottom. So for the this grid here. Okay. So this grid right here will need a margin bottom, the container. So we're going to say grid container class, and we're just going to do margin bottom. Let's do 20. Yeah, that should be fine. Let's add, oh, we need to have it here, and we need to say grid container. Okay. Cool. So it's starting to give some, shape to what we want it to look like. Okay. Now we just need to add the button here. So we can just add the button right in the same component. So we are going to come down here, add another grid component. Okay, and then inside this grid, we're going to add a button. And then we're going to say, for now, it's going to be add team. But if you remember, if you had a team selected, it would say edit team. So we'll work on that state after. It'll be conditionally rendered on the text. And let's do a couple modifications to the component. And okay. So we're going to say the variant is going to be contain. And then we're going to disable the elevation. And then we're going to set the color to primary. And then we'll eventually have a onClick event. and we'll deal with that once we have state. Okay, so now that looks a little off, doesn't it? So with flex, what we need to do is we need to align the items here to flex end. And it should come to the end like that. Okay? So we need to add some margin here. So I'm just gonna say let's see what a good name would let's do button. Oh, this is where the hard you guys can probably pick a better name, but this is all I got for now. So I'm just gonna do button margin left, and let's do 30. Okay, so 30, and then we're gonna add it here. You know, you definitely want to make these classes reusable, so I would probably keep it more generic, but in this case it's fine. So class name, button margin, left. Cool. So that is starting to look a little more like what we have there. And I believe for now, as far as the styling goes and the component layout, this component is done. Now I believe we need to add this styling to the table. So let's go back to that and let's get that added. So we need to add styling to the table cell. So that's why we have this with styles. So we can create a variable here, and I'm going to call it styled table cell. And we're going to use a with styles function, pass in a function in here, and then we're going to also just pass in some CSS to give it styling. So I'm going to give this property head, and then I'm going to say the background color is EEE. And then we also need to wrap this with the table cell, attach it to the table cell component. So here what we'll do is now we'll say styled table cell. And I'm just going to copy that and paste that. Oh, replace this. Cool. That should be it for the table. So what we need to do now is work on this form. All right. So I'm going to leave this alone for a little bit. And now in the form, I'm going to create a directory here for the form. Because what I did here, I had two components actually in this form. So I had these two as one, and then I had the player component for the form completely separate because this was all being dynamically rendered. So I want to keep those two separate. So I'm going to create two components here, player form and team form. Okay, so let's start with the team form. That's really the container for the player form. It's like the main container for the form, and the player form is just a part of that. Okay, so let's just import React from React, and let's also import what we need from the material UI library. Material UI. I can't type. Okay. So we're going to import text field, grid, button, container, typography, and make styles. And if you guys didn't know, the make styles and there's another one that we use with styles. There's a difference there. With styles is used for, when you want to make it to attach it to a component. And make styles is when you want to attach a class to just the component itself. So subtle difference there. So here I'm going to create the function team form. Export default team form. Okay, we're going to return in here All right, so let's see what's the first thing we're going to do. We are going to, so this is going to be quite a bigger component that we have created. We're going to create a form. Okay, we're going to give this form an ID. We'll just call it team form. And then that should be it for now. We might add some styling to it after. So we need to add this basketball team title. So we're going to use a typography. I'm going to say basketball team. Okay, so okay, I haven't included it, but so this, as you guys can see, this is all conditionally rendered. We'll get to that when we add state, but for now, everything will just show up at once. Actually, what I'll do is I'll just comment these two things out, and then I'm going to import the team form. Whoops. Team form from team form. And then let's just import that here. Okay. So, directory. So we need to go inside form. There we go. There we go. So we need to change the styling of the form because the background is white, I believe. So we'll get to those changes. Actually, let's go ahead and do that so that we can get. We're going to do several classes that we add here. So I'm going to say const use styles equals to make styles. And I'm going to just say form container. And I'm going to say background color is FFF. And I'm going to also add some padding here. We're going to do 25 pixels top and bottom, 20 pixels left and right. Okay, let's add this here. Form container equals to use styles. Okay, and then we're going to add the class name. Okay, cool. So, okay guys, so I don't want to add the actual background color to the form itself. We're going to create another component. We're going to add in the container component inside the form and then give that styling and add background there. Here, we want to just set the max width to 700. And then also we want to set the margin to auto so that it is centered. Okay, cool. So now inside typography, I believe we're going to add some props, pass down some props. Yeah, we're going to give it a variant. So let's just format this properly. Okay, so we're going to give it a variant of H5. And one thing I realized, the reason why it's like this, the form itself is not going to be inside of our container. So what I'm going to do here, the form will be its own little component that will be able to handle its own. I'm going to comment this all out. Keep team form like this. Okay, cool. That's what I want it to be like. And let's put this here. So I want to add some styling to the class here, to this typography. So I want to push this way down. Let's do that. Let me give the styling here. So I'm going to call this form title. Okay. And then I'm going to give this a margin. So I'm going to do 100 pixels, 20 pixels, 20 pixels, and 10 pixels. Okay, and then I'm going to add it here, and then add the class here. Oop. Okay, cool. So that looks good. And then now let's get started with our form. So we're going to add a container now below our typography. I cannot spell. Okay. And we will add a class to that. But let's go ahead and get started with all this now. So what's the first thing we're going to do? We are going to add these two inputs here. Okay, they're just going to be text inputs. So that's why we're adding a grid. And this grid is going to be a container for all the fields. And we're going to add some justify, and we're going to say space between. And we're also going to add spacing between our components here, as you can see here. And we're going to set that spacing to 2. Okay. Now, the next thing we're going to do is add our individual grid items now. Okay, so this will be an item. We're going to give this extra small, and the size will be 6. And you won't be able to see that yet. And then we're going to add text field. Okay, so text field is not like that. Sorry, it's going to be closing like this. This will take in a couple properties. So let's just give this an ID of team form. And so I gave this ID of team form, so I'm going to use that as our ID. And then I'm going to do __ team city, team dash city. Okay, that's the first thing. And we're going to give this a label of team city. And then we'll give this a variant of outline. And we're going to give this a size of small. Let's see if you guys can see this. Yep, there we go. So let's stay on here now. We're going to do a full width here. And we're going to set this as required. Okay, required, we'll just add that asterisk. Okay, and then we are going to add a couple functions, but that will be later on. So I'm going to copy this. And there should be another grid item. So I'm going to copy this grid item, do Shift-Alt down. Okay. And the only thing that's going to change here is these labels. So now we're going to add the team name. Cool. So let's go ahead and add the container, the background to the container. So that's what I was talking about earlier. So we're going to say container. And I believe we're going to give this a background color of FFF. And I think that should be the only thing we give it. We need to add some padding here. So padding, we're going to do 25 pixels, 20 pixels. Add the container. Give the class name here, container. I know we could probably give it a way better name. Okay, cool. So that's exactly what we want there. All right, so let's keep going on here. So that is all we need for the team city team name as far as the component styling goes. Now we need to add the player form. And then I believe also this button is not a part of the player form. It's actually a part of the team form. So let's go ahead and add the button, and then we'll add the player form. Okay, so I have button up here. I'm going to have it here and call this add player. Okay, so let's see how that looks like. Okay, so what we're going to do here is this needs to actually be inside a grid item. So I will add that in just a second because we're going to need to center it. Color will be default. And I don't think we need to even add that color since that's probably the default property for it. And then we'll do variant, outline. Okay, and then it just takes a onClick function, which we'll add that later. And let's wrap that inside a grid. And this will be a container because we need to justify this. And you can only justify things inside the container grids. So we are going to say justify center. Okay, and now we're going to add the button inside the grid. Cool. So we're probably going to need to add that some spacing. We'll add that in after we get the player form. All right, guys. So setting up this just takes a little bit of time. I hope you guys are enjoying this. Okay, so let's get this player form going. This one is kind of fun because we get to dynamically create this one, the rows, except for the first one that'll always be there. So we're going to do export React from React, create the function, export default player form. Okay, so we are going to import from the Material UI library. We're going to import some of the similar stuff that we needed for the player form. We'll have a select, input label, form control. We're going to have form helper text to show our errors, if there are any, because some of these fields will be required. If you do add players, you can't leave them empty. All right, so we have make styles. Let's just go ahead and get that started. Use styles equals to make styles. Cool. Okay, so the first thing we need to do here is set up the grid. Oh, we need to add the return function. We need to have the return, and then we're going to set up the grid. Okay, so this is going to act as the container. So I know we said we're going to dynamically render this, which we are. In order to do that, we'll need to set up everything in Redux. So we'll get this initial one started, and then we'll come back to it and make it dynamically render, which we'll loop through, and we'll do that. Okay. So it's a step-by-step process. It takes some time. Yeah. So we're gonna do spacing here also as 2, and I believe I just put that in quotes here. We should be able to do the same. And then we'll do, that should be it. We might need to add some styling. So we're going to do a grid item. Okay. Item here. We're going to do excess of 5. Okay, so the first thing we're going to have here is the player name. I always keep doing that. It's a self-closing one. Okay, so we're going to do label as player name. Let's save that. It should get it added. Oh, but I didn't import it. I'll go ahead and import this so that we can see it. Let's do variant outline. Let's import that here. Import player form from player form. And we are going to add this right before our grid button here. So we're going to do player form. Oh, not player table. Let's remove this player table import. Okay, cool. So that's how it looks. Let's fix that up. So we need to make, oh, we need to add some properties here. We need to make the size small. We need to set the full width property. Cool. And this will be, only the first row will be required. So right now I'll just leave it as required. Okay, so this will take a couple other things like value, on change, helper text. We'll add that in later. And now let's add our other grid item. So this one will be for the number. So we'll do item here, and then we'll do excess of 3. Text field, I'm going to just copy this. Okay, and this will be called just number. Okay, so we need to really fix that spacing. We'll get to that. Okay, so now we have number, and then we also need position. So position will be a dropdown. We'll do item here, excess of 3. Okay, so here, this is what we'll need: the input, select, and then the form control. So we're going to do the form control. And the form control will have a couple of properties we're going to add. This will be full width. We are going to add the size of small. And then it'll also take in an error, but right now we don't have that. So we are going to add validation to these. Okay. So input label. And then input label will say position. Cool. And then we're going to have a select here. And then we'll have our options. So let's just add in our properties. So we need native. We are going to do full width. Don't need a comma there. We are going to make this required for now. Okay, cool. And then let's then add in our options. So I'm going to add in one option. And the first one will be empty. And then we're also going to make that disabled. Okay. And then we're going to just copy this. So probably need one more. So for the positions, I'm going to list them out here. Point guard. And then we're going to do shooting guard. Small forward. Power forward. And then center. And then in our values, I'm just going to do the short hand. So we're going to do a PG, SG, SF, PF, and then just C. I would create a constants folder, constants file, which is an object that would list these out. So let's say they ever added positions in the NBA or something. We could just add to that constants, it would be easier to keep track of them, or if they, updated them for some reason. So, and let's remove this disabled. Okay, so let's see. We need to give this an initial value of empty. Okay, cool. Now you see how it's not aligned here. It's kind of the same issue we had with the here, where we had to add the flex end to the line items. So we will fix that. Let's see what the fix for that actually is. I think one more thing we need to add is this X button right here. So let's finish that out, and then we'll fix up the styling. Okay, so one more grid item. Okay, in this grid item, it's going to be an XS of just 1. We don't need a lot of space for it. We're going to have the button, and it's just going to be an X. I would probably use a icon. That would look way better. But for this tutorial, we'll just use that letter. So we're going to do size, we'll set that as medium. And then we'll have it on click. And then for this first one, we're just going to keep it disabled. Okay, so it is going to the next line. Did I actually give too much? It should be up 12, right? So it should be 5, 3, 3, 1. I forgot to do one thing. So in order to make this stay here, what's happening is the width of this button is way too big. And let me see if I could fix that by just making the size of this small. Nope. So what we need to do is reduce the width of this. So what we're going to do is add some styling here. So we're going to say, we're going to call this the delete player button. And then we're going to say text align center. Okay, we're going to want to center this. And then we're going to make the min width of this 40 pixels. So I think we can just do 40 like that. So object destructuring. And then we're going to say delete player button. Okay. And then we're going to add that class. Let's see. Do we can add it to the actual, the button itself. So delete player button. Okay, so that didn't actually help. What am I missing here? So I think what I did wrong here, I did not put this grid in its own item, as its own item. I put it inside the position. There we go. That looks strange. Okay, so we'll fix that up. Let's fix that up. Okay. So first thing I want to do is I want to align this all. See like how it's aligned here. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to create another class name, and I'm going to call this position text select, and I'm going to give this a position of relative. I was not able to actually get this to align using flex. If you're able to, that would be great. Let me know how you did it. So what I did, I used position relative, and then I pushed the bottom of it up. So I'm going to add this here to position select. And then I'm going to, not in the button, in the grid here, I'm going to say position text field. Oh, did I position select? Okay. So that is aligned. All right. Okay, so now this is all aligned. Let's see how this looks. That looks pretty similar. The X button is a little weird, but it's fine. I think it's just because it's disabled and this alignment is off. So let's fix this alignment here and let's add some spacing that it desperately needs. Okay, so the best way to do this is in the grid. Let's see which grid though we need to add it. We're going to add this to the container grid. So the container, we're going to do container grid. I think I did grid container earlier. I'm going to try and keep it consistent. I'm going to do margin top 20. And I'm going to keep this at 7. Let's see if that's consistent. Yeah, it is. So that is by default pixels. I'm going to do grid container. And then give this class name here of grid container. Cool. Now, what we need to do is we need to get this aligned here. And, one thing we can do is we can also add margin bottom here. Cool. Okay, so to fix this extra spacing here, we're just going to push this in by adding in a margin left. So I'm going to say margin left, and I'm just going to do 1 pixel, and that seems to have fixed it. And I'm going to try to push this in a little bit. It's kind of like, it doesn't seem to be centered, so I'm just going to reduce that. Yeah, that kind of pushes it in. Looks a little bit better. All right, so now we have these form fields filled out. We need to make this dynamically render based on the click of the add player button, which is not yet set up. So now we're going to add this last part in the team form, and then I think we can start with our Redux store and get that set up. So this one should be pretty easy. So in our team form, let's see here, we need to add, I believe, just another grid layout for save team and cancel. So I'm going to come down, and it's going to be its own grid container. Okay. Container. All right, and then we're going to add 2 buttons here. And this is going to be cancel. And then we're going to do save team. Let's see how that looks. Okay, so we're going to push this down just a little bit. We'll add in a class for that. And also I want to justify these items, and I want to do space between. Okay, cool. So it's like that. And then let's do a class for this. So this is going to be, let's call this button grid container. I'm going to do like something that's related to the save functionality. So save button grid container. And let's see, I think we're just going to add a margin of top of 30. And then we'll also push in the buttons a little bit by adding in some padding. So we're going to do padding of 15 pixels top and bottom, and then 10 pixels left and right. And then that should be it. Let's see. Let me do save button. And this is getting too long, so I'm just going to add these like this. So go to the bottom. Okay, so we're going to add the grid class here. Okay. Let's see, what am I need? I guess it's because since it's in the container. Yeah, it makes sense. I need to actually put this outside of the container. Alright, so I'll put this outside. Cool. So I need to add a background to that class. Okay, cool. There we go. And then let's just format these buttons and we should be good. So alright, so this is going to have a variant of outline, and then a color of default, which I don't even think we need to add there, but I'm just going to add it. I'm going to disable the elevation, and then we'll have an on-click event. Cool. I'm just going to copy these, put it in for the save team, fix this formatting, and then change the color to primary. And this should be contained. There we go. Perfect. And then this will also have a on click. All right, guys, cool. So I think we're finally done with this setup piece. We just need to add this dynamically. That's it. And then we should be good. And then if you remember here, we commented this part out. So what we're going to be doing is keeping track of some state here to dynamically either show the table or the form, depending on what you click here. Okay, cool. So what we need to do now is start keeping track of our state. So let's do this. Let's uncomment this code. And it's gonna throw an error. So I'm gonna just comment out team form for now. And let's dynamically render these two components based on this click. So we're just going to keep track of that here using useState. We don't need the Redux store for that. And I'm just going to say useState, and I'm going to say it's going to be a Boolean. And we're going to just say is team form shown. Set is team form shown. Okay. So based on that, what we're going to do here. So I'm going to wrap this whole thing around a section because either one of them will be rendered in this section. And then I'm going to do the curly braces here, and I'm going to say is team form shown question mark, and then I'm going to put the open close parentheses, and what we're going to do is put the team form. Actually, we don't need the parentheses since it's just one component. So team form else, then now I'll do the parentheses because we have multiple components being rendered. So do that. Take that out. Okay. So now since it's set to false, it will always show this now. Cool. So what we need to do is this needs to be passed down to the team select so that we can dynamically change that if we need to. So I'm going to come in here and say set is team form. Okay. So team form, team select. So in team select, we are going to get a prop. I'm going to just destructure it here and say is set is team form shown. Now, whenever you click on add team, I'm going to say on click and then, brackets, and then I'm going to just have an inline function here. And I'm going to say set is team form shown to true. It's not defined. Okay, let's see what I did here. Set is team form shown. How is it not defined? Oh. Okay, so I forgot I just misspelled. I didn't add shown. I just should show. And I'm going to set that to true. Okay, cool. So if I hit add team, it'll show this. So let's go to the cancel button. So that means we need to pass the same function down to the team form. All right, so the team form, I'm going to get this prop. set is team form shown. Let's just copy this. And then for the cancel button, we're going to have an on click set and set this to false. So now we should be able to navigate back and forth, which we are able to. Cool. So that part is done. Okay, so let's see what the next part is that we should do. I think we should start keeping track of our state here in the form. I think that's the best thing, place to start. So we are going to be keeping track of all this in our Redux store. All right, so now this is where the fun part is. So we get to, think about how we want to set this up. So what I did when building this app is I kept one reducer for keeping track of all the form state, and then I kept another reducer for the saved form state, if that makes sense. So like after the data is saved, I kept track of it, like what we need for the table and what teams exist. So I think we're gonna keep it that way. So I'm gonna create a reducer here and call it, let's see, we can call it team form reducer. And notice how I didn't name it .jsx because there won't be any React in here. I see a lot of, developers name all their files JSX, which is, there's nothing wrong with it. I just like to keep it separated. All right, so in our reducer, we need actions that will actually tell us what state to change based on the scenario. So we will create those actions, but right now I'm just going to create this function, team form reducer. I'm going to export this team form reducer, and then we're going to have a switch statement here, and we're going to be action.type. Where does action come from? Well, it comes from here. So we're going to have a state, and then we're going to have a action passed in. Now, the state is going to be what is our initial state going to be? So let's create a variable here called initial state, and let's look at it. So it looks like we're going to have a couple things here. We're going to have these fields. So team city, team name, those are pretty straightforward. But here, since we can dynamically add players, we would want to keep track of this inside of an array of objects that contains each row. That way, if we need to delete something, we can delete it based off its index, and it would readjust it. All right, so we're going to here. I kept an ID, but we won't have an ID right now because we're just all in the front end. But maybe, I do plan on adding a backend to this project for another video. So we will, use that ID for future purpose probably, but we'll just leave it at 0 for now. So city is going to be a string, and then the team name is going to be a string. All these will be strings except, all these will be. And then I kept this key as player details. So this is going to be an array of objects. So I'm going to give the first row's details only. So I'm going to say player name, empty string, player number, and player in front of it might be redundant, but I just want to keep it consistent, and then player position. Okay, so we're going to use that initial state and set this equal to the, all right. Oops. Okay, so what would be an action that we want to do? Well, the first thing we will want to do is have an update statement. So handled in here. So anytime this changes, we would want to update the state in the Redux store. So let's create a actions file. And then I'm going to say, this is just a file that contains a bunch of constants. So I'm just going to call this team form actions.js. Okay, so let me rephrase. In the actions, these are a bunch of functions that will contain, that will be passed down into your components that will tell the Redux store to execute and change the state. In the action types, we will have a file that contains a bunch of constants, like verbs. So update player position, update team form, or whatever, something like that. So team form action types .js. All right, and this is just going to be, like I said, a bunch of constants. So I'm just going to say const update. Let's see, update team details. And then I'm just going to copy that. And then I'm just going to export this object, and I'm going to say, so we're going to create many more, but I just want to get started with this one. Okay, so now I can import this into our reducer. Oh my goodness. Okay. Action types, team form action types. And they're just going to be update team details. So we're going to have a switch statement case here for update team details. So now what would we do inside it? What would we expect to come in from here? Well, so in the team details, we are going to update either the city or the team name. Okay, so you can only update one thing at a time here based on the input change. So we want to return here. We're going to get all the existing state. We're going to update the city or the team name. So if we're going to do this dynamically, from the actions function that we would pass down to the component, we would expect a key of what we want to update. So that would be in the action object. So we're going to say action.payload because that's what we usually pass in. And in the payload will contain an object. So I'm going to say just team key. Okay. And then the value will be action.payload.team value. So notice how the details don't actually tell us what is being updated. That is being done by the component. So let's give that a try. So I'm going to create a function here that we can pass down to the component. So first thing I'm going to import is the constant. So from the action types. Okay, and then I'm going to say update team details. And then I'm going to create a function called update team details. All right, and then this will return an object. Okay, so this will take in a couple arguments. So we could just pass in expect one argument, and we can just say team data. So this will be an object that contains the key and the value that we're going to update. So we're going to have a type here, and then it's going to be update team details, and then we're going to have the payload here. All right, the payload we'll set that to team data. Okay, so we're just going to export this. Okay, so now we need to pass this action into our component, which is the team form. So, we have to, what I like to do is in our container, so this is where a container comes in. We can pass in the Redux state and the dispatch actions to update our state from the container to the component. So we want to create a container for the team form component so that we can update the state using that function that we created in our action folder. So I'm going to create a new file here, call it teamformcontainer.js. Okay, And now here, I'm going to import something from the React Redux library, which is going to be the connect function, which will connect the state from the Redux store to the component. So I'm going to do import, and I'm going to import team form from components team form. It's going to be form team form. And then I'm also going to import the action that we created. So it's going to be store actions, team form actions, update, team details. Okay. And then I'm going to export default, connect, and then this will get connected to the team form component. So what goes inside connect? So we're going to create two variables here, map state to props, which is going to pass in the state that we want from the Redux store into the component as props. And this just returns an object. And then we're going to have one more variable, map dispatch to props. This is how you update your state inside the Redux store. Okay, so we don't have any state currently that we want to pass in. Well, we actually do. So since it's default state, I'm going to pass that in, all of that into the component here, team form. So we need to pass in the state in the update team details function. So here we can just have a key update team details, and then we're going to be expecting team data, and then we're going to call dispatch function. Inside there we'll pass execute the team details with the argument of team data. Okay, so we have that taken care of. So in the connect, we pass in map state to props and then map dispatch. Okay, so let's set up our state that we want to pass in. Alright, so I want to pass in the entire object. So I believe, one thing that I forgot to do is that in our store.js, I forgot to import the reducer and then pass it into this combined reducers. So I believe it's team form reducer from reducers. And then the key here, I'm just going to have it as team form and then pass in team form reducer. And you should be able to see the state, the initial state that we have. Yeah, there we go. So we have the initial state for the player and then the team city and name. And then we have that ID. And that ID is just referring to like the team. Just wanted to clear that up. So I don't think we need this anymore. And now we have access to the state. So I'm going to say team form is going to be state.teamform. Okay, cool. So we don't need this container. We can actually go to the main component, and we're displaying the team form component, but we want to actually display the team form container component. So I'm going to import that team form container from containers. Okay. And this will be container. All right, let's see. Oh, okay, cool. So one thing I forgot to do is add in the default state. So when there's no case statement, we need to have a default scenario where it just returns state, which is going to be the initial state. Now let's refresh that. Cool. Now if I do add team, now we can have all. Now we will have access to the Redux store state. So let's go inside of that component, and here we will have access to will be passed into the container as state. So it's going to be team form. So here we should just be able to directly access the city, team name, and let's see if that is how it's working. So for the team city, we'll set the value to team name. Oh, this is just city, right? So it should just be city, and then the value here should be team name. And we can't see anything right now, but let's do a test. Okay, so it's not doing that. Let's see if we can see how it's being, we can see how it's being passed. Inside the components, probably. Okay. Okay, what is let me go back to the container. Team form, okay? State.teamForm, and let me just make sure that is what we have it here as, yep, team form. So I don't see why we don't. Okay, what I'm going to do here, it's going to be team form, right? So let's try doing team form dot city, and then team form dot team name. City is not defined. Okay, I'm not sure what's being passed down here. Let's see. I'm gonna just erase these. And what I'm gonna do here is just do props. And let's just console.log this. Set. I'm just gonna, I know this is being passed for sure. So just do that. Alright, so let's see. Team form is being passed. And so is the function. Okay, interesting. So it is working as we wanted. I'm going to destructure all that now. So it is set as team form, and then we have team form here, and then we also have update team details. And I'm going to come down here and do console.log team form. Let's refresh that and see. Yes. Okay. So then whenever I set the value here to city, city is not defined. Oh, got it. So it should be teamform.city. City is not where. Oh, okay. Well, is there another place I have? Okay, there we go. That was weird. So now we can see that our Redux storage state is being passed down to our component. Okay, cool. I just wanted to demonstrate that. All right, so I don't want to access the properties of teamform like this every time. I'm going to destructure that further down. All right, so I can just come down here, do teamform, and then destructure it. So I'm going to do city, team name, and then I can do player details. Okay, so that way I don't need to use teamform. Here I can just say city. Let's get rid of this console.log. Okay, cool. So we got city, we got team name here. Cool. And then we also, okay, we will also have player details, which will pass into our component. Sort of know why it's doing that value as like that. It shouldn't do that. It'll probably get fixed. Okay, so I'm going to reset the state in our reducer to empty string. And then in our form, let's pass down the property here, player details. Okay, I'm going to refresh this. And then let's work on updating the state for team city, team name, okay? Since it's right here. Let's see. So we need an onChange event here. And I'm going to just keep one function. I believe that should be the easiest thing to do. So we'll have a function for each text field. We can say const on team city change. Okay, we'll be getting the value in. And we will actually be getting the event. Okay. And then we'll grab the value from that event object. And then what we're going to do here is say update team details. So we're going to update the team details here. And we're going to say update team details. Pass in the object. So it takes in the team key and the team value. Okay, so the team value is event.target.value. Simple enough. And the key here will be just city in quotes. And then we can just here have an onChange and do team handle team, what did I call it? On team city change. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to just type in Chicago. Let's see if the state got updated. Yep, you can see all of these actions are being called for each change, and it should be Chicago. Cool. And then let's do the same thing for team name. Now, we could do like one generic function that handles all this, but I'm just going to separate it all out so you guys can clearly see the changes that we're making on team name change, event, update team details, team key is going to be team name, team value will be event.target.value. And then the onChange function here on team name change. Okay, so let's try Chicago Bulls. Cool. And that should be updated. Yep, you can see there the Bulls. Okay, cool. All right, cool. So that was pretty easy. Now let's get to this a little bit more challenging part, but not too difficult. So we are passing the player details into our component here, player form. Okay. And now what we need to do, let's work on dynamically rendering this before we start saving data. So we will need to create a function to handle the onClick event. So we can keep track of that in the Redux store, okay, since we have an array of objects. So in our actions, in our team form actions, I'm going to create another function and it's just going to be add player. So I'm going to go inside of team form actions and create a constant add player. Export add player. Okay. And then create a function here. Add player. This won't take in any data. So do that. And this will just have a type of add player. All right. So in our player form, we will be passing the player details, right? So destructure that player details. Now we can create this pretty much in a loop. Okay, we're gonna just loop through that. And what I'm gonna do here is do brackets, and I'm gonna do player details dot map. Okay, we're gonna loop through this and then return the component here. So in the grid, all this grid stuff we're gonna get rid of and put it in here. Let me just put this around some fragments. All right, cool. So we are going to return this. And now, since we're looping and creating these components, we need a key here. Okay, and since we don't have any really like player IDs or anything, we can either do two things. We can just use the key from the index of the array, or we can create a UUID, like a unique ID, using a library and just do that. To keep it short and simple, the index here will work perfectly fine when you want to insert or delete. So I'm just going to use that. So I'm going to destructure whatever inside the player detail array, and then I'm going to have the index here. So inside the array, we're just going to have three properties for each object. Player name, player number, and player position. Okay, and then here the key will be required, and just keep it as index. Okay, so now the value here will be player name. The value here will be player number, and then we'll have the value here as player position. Cool, and let's make sure that it's not throwing any console errors at us for not having a key or anything, and it doesn't seem to be. So we'll check again whenever we add in the add player functionality. Okay, so now we are dynamically rendering this actually, and this required now should be true or false based on if the index is the first object in the array, then it should be true. Otherwise, it should be not required. So now it actually is confusing. I'm going to actually leave that as is, because if you do add let's say if you do add this and you try to save the team, that's a lot of errors, but technically it is required if you're going to keep it out there. It's not required if, only one player is required. So if you do add a second one, this is required. So that is not going to be dynamically. It should be required always. Sometimes you just got to think through that stuff. And we will be adding form error handling. It won't be too much. It should be pretty straightforward. Okay, so I'm trying to see what else we need. Okay, we need to do the add player stuff. Okay, so we need to go back to this team form, and we need to go inside of our actual container. So we need to import the add player. Is that actually in there? Yes, it is. Oh, we didn't export it, that's why. Okay. Gonna do add player. And then this is just gonna be a dispatch of add player. Okay, so let's see. I don't need to refresh that, but so whenever we do the on click for the add player, that's in the team form. So we need to be passing in team form here, add player, go to the bottom. Whenever we do add player, we need to have the on click, and this is just going to be simply calling add player. Okay, now let's see what happens. Nothing. Let me refresh it maybe. Nope. It's probably throwing an error, hopefully. Nope, it's not doing anything. Okay, so, oh, well, duh. You know, what we need to do is when we call add player, we need to change something in the reducer. Haha, completely forgot about that part. There's a lot going on whenever you try to add some state manipulation here. You need quite a bit of things you need to do. So add player, and I'm going to just do case add player. Okay, so we need to grab all the existing state, and then we're going to get the player details. Okay, that's going to be an array. We're going to grab all the existing player details. So it's going to be player details. And then we're going to add another object, another row of player details, which is just going to be these default values. And that's why nothing was happening. So if I do that, let's see if that even added something. So add player is being called, but nothing is actually happening. Oh, okay. Well, I guess I just need to refresh the page. Don't know why. That's kind of weird. Okay, so let me see one thing. So now, whenever I did call add player, now it's two objects inside the array. I don't know why I need to refresh the page. So one thing that I made a mistake here is the margin bottom is too much. So I'm going to need to go back here, get rid of this. Okay. Now there's going to be too little space. So what I'm going to do is go inside the button component and then add a margin top there. So now one thing we need to do is fix this. This should not be disabled. So this should only be disabled if index is equal to 0. Cool. There we go. So that now we need a delete function. Okay. So now in order to delete something, we need to delete it from the Redux store. So let's see what that will entail. So let's start from the reducer first. Actually, let's start from the action type and add the action. Delete player. Delete player. Add that here. Okay, I'm going to close out of this. Add in the action. So let's go to the actions. Add in delete player. Create the function. So delete player will require something. We need to know a way of how to delete that. So we're going to use that index, and we're going to pass that in here. So we're going to say type is delete player, and then we'll do the payload as just player index. Okay. And then we'll export that. Okay, cool. Now let's go back to the reducer and then add in delete player. And then come down here, case, delete player. Okay, so delete player, we will need to get all the existing state and then update just the player details. Okay, and the way we can do this is I'm going to use the filter function and filter out the player row that we don't want. Okay, so there's many ways you could do this actually. So we can do state.playerDetails.filter. Okay, so this is going to take in the player detail, and which contains all the data. We're not concerned with all the data there. And then we're going to do, this needs to be an arrow function. And then this is just going to simply return player index. So we want to exclude what is not equal to the payload index that we grab. So we're going to do player index not equal to action.payload, since that contains the player index passed from the component. All right. Don't need a comma there. There we go. Let's refresh that. Cool. So now let's get that in the container. Let's do delete player, dispatch, delete player, and this is going to get a player index. Cool. And let's fix that spacing. So let's go ahead and try this. Let's pass this into our component. Well, it's already passed in. Let's grab it. Delete player. And when we hit the X button, so delete player will need to be passed into the player form. Okay. Okay. And then we're gonna go to the player form, get this delete player, and then the on click function here will just be, and then we're gonna just have an arrow function, delete player, give it the player index. Or, sorry, it's just index. Alright, so let's see. Cool, it's being deleted. So let's do a test. Oh, we don't have, we'll test that. Okay, let's do a test in our store. So let's say we want to delete, let's see, this one. So this should be 0, 1, 2. Index 2 should be deleted. And if you see the action, so payload, the index is 2, that the correct one is being deleted. Cool. So now we need to, let's fix this real fast, and then we'll get the state update working. Getting closer, but still have a lot to do. It's a pretty big project, way bigger than I thought it would be. Hopefully you guys are still hanging in there and enjoying this. Okay. So in the team form, I'm just going to do a margin top. Try to keep it generic. Margin top, and let's just do 20. And then I need to include that here. player. Just do class name. Let's do class name top. Margin top. Cool. That should be fine. All right, guys. So we will do the update of this now. So I'm going to create a action called update player details. All right, so call update. I'm just going to copy that and export it here. Okay. And I'm going to create an action function for this. Update player details. And this will require a couple things. We'll need the index 2 here because we need to know which player detail to update. So it'll just be an object, a player detail. I'm going to say player data. Keep it consistent with the team data. And then the type here will be update player details. Payload will be player data. Okay, cool. And I'm going to get rid of these parentheses since they're not needed. And then export this. Okay. So let's go in the reducer and see what that looks like. Case, update, player details, return. Let's grab all the existing state. Okay, so what we want to do is first we need to, since it's an array of objects, we need to find the exact player detail that's being updated. So if it could be like this one that's being updated, but all the other ones are still the same. So we would do player details. So we would map through it. Okay, so we're going to map through all the data. Map arrow function, and we're going to have that. We'll do an explicit return. So we're going to do player detail here, and then have the index. So what we're going to do here is we're going to be getting a payload, and that's going to contain the player index that's being updated. So we're going to do if the current index is not equal to the action.payload.player index, then return the player detail, that means it's not changed. Otherwise, we're going to get the player detail for that, the one that we do want to change. So grab all the player details, existing ones, and then we're going to update the one that is passed from the component. So we're going to just do the same thing we did with the team update. It's going to be player key, and then it'll be action.payload player value. Simple enough. And that's it. So we'll be updating what we want within the map function when we loop through it. There are several ways you can go about updating this. This is what I just prefer and use consistently. All right, so let's see. Did we pass it into our container? No. Let's add that to the container. And then this will require player data. Dispatch, update, player details, player data. Cool. we can go inside of our team form. I'm going to close out of all this for now. And player update player details. Okay. And then we're going to go and pass this on to our player form. If you're wondering why I didn't create a container for the player form, well, it's a direct child of this team form, so there's no really need to do that, in my opinion. I didn't think it would really benefit much from doing that. If it was completely separate, if they didn't have a relationship like that, then yeah, I would have created a container for it. So player form, and we'll now have, let's just copy that, this function. So I'm going to create one function that will handle the changing of it. Okay, so we're going to create a function in here called handle player detail change. This will take in the event, and we'll pass in the index and then the player field. Okay, this is not right. Let's fix that and then do that. Okay, so the player field is going to be the name of, what are we updating here? Player name, player number, player position. That's what we're going to be passing in there. And then this is just going to simply call update player details, pass it in as an object. This will be player index. Okay, and then the player key will be player field, and then player value will just be event.target.value, and then this can just be called on these on change. We're gonna have the event call handle player detail change, and we're going to pass in the event, pass in the index, and then we're going to pass in the player field, which will be in strings, and this will just be player name. Let's copy this. Change this to player number, and then let's have it here, and let's change this to player position. Okay, I'm going to refresh this, and let's see how that is working. So if I change this shooting guard, let's see if it got updated. Redux, update player details, and it looks like it got changed. Let's test this. Looks like it's getting changed, and that looks like it's at well. Cool. Now let's add another player. Let's do test 2, 25. Let's do center. It looks like we got another one here. Perfect. So that is working. Let's try deleting it, and it gets deleted. Perfect, guys. That's a big step. And now, well, what is the next thing we want to do? I think I saw this here. Whenever I hit cancel, I think we should be, we should remove all of this. Now let's see if I kept that consistent. I don't think I did, actually. Let me see. Now let's see if I hit cancel. Okay. It looks to be it's clearing it up. So we'll do the same there as well. Okay, so next thing, let's work on saving the team. And then one thing I want to do is whenever we hit cancel, we should actually be resetting this form data. So we'll work on that afterwards too. So first thing I want to do, we'll get the form validations, and then we'll do save team, and then we'll do cancel. All right. So much to do. Alrighty, so okay, so saving the team will this is where we're going to have another reducer. So I told you that we would have a reducer for the form and then one for the table. So this is like table meaning like just the this like the finalized data. So we want to create a new reducer now. And I'm just going to call this simply for team reducer. All right. Create a function here called team reducer. Export default team reducer. Okay. And do we need to have initial state here? Yeah, we'll have initial state. So a couple things here that we'll have for the state. Okay, so we have this select here. So I'm going to have a key for selected team. Keep that as empty. And then we're going to have a teams array. Okay, so that we'll have an array of all the teams that exist so that we can loop through them and display the data as needed. So we're going to do state is equal to initial state. And then we'll do action. So let's do the first one. Let's do the switch statement, action.type. And let's do the first thing is default return state. Cool. And we need to add this to the store. And this will be team reducer. And I'm just going to simply do team. I'm going to do teams. Team reducer. Cool. Okay, so the reason I create a new reducer is whenever we click on save, it'll add that to that part of the Redux state. Okay. So that means we need to create new actions. Team actions. .js, and then team action types .js. So let's do the team actions types, since those are just constants. So we're gonna have, let's do a couple here. Add team, and then we'll also have the ability to update the team. So we're gonna do update selected team. And then we'll do update team. Now let me explain the difference between the two. Let's see, I believe I kept it the same here. So if okay, I'm gonna have to create one. Now if I do, so update selected team is just going to be whatever you changed here. That's what we're storing. And then update team is just like actually something else. Let me see what that update team. So update team will be called if you select the team and then, so basically when you when you hit save team. Yeah, cool. All right, so that's what those are for. Let's export that. Add team, update selected team, and then update team. Okay, don't need that. And then we'll have a couple actions. Let's import the types. Add team. Okay, so we're going to do const add team. And then this should not expect any, we won't have any params here. we're just going to do type. Whoops. Let's do parentheses, then brackets, type, add team. Actually, we will be expecting some data because obviously all this form data will be there. It's just, we'll just say team data. Okay. And then for the payload, we'll do team data. Let's just work on that one function and then export this, add team. Okay. And now in this reducer, I'm going to add in the action types. I'm going to copy that. So case, add team. All right, so this one's going to be fairly straightforward. So we're going to do a return of state, and then we're going to do teams, which is going to be an array. We're going to keep the existing teams, state.teams, and then we're going to just add action payload, action.payload here, which is going to be the new team. Okay, in exactly the format that we need it to be in. All right, so let's get that into the container. So now we're going to be importing from a different file. Honestly, this add player could have just been easily, sorry, not add player. Whoops, add team actions. Add team probably could have been in the team form actions, now that I'm thinking about it. But it's okay, we can just have it separated. Probably makes more sense to keep it in the team form actions. So team data, dispatch, add team data. All right, so in the team form component, we'll have add team. And then when we go down to save, okay, so save is going to where we have to do the validation. And if all the validation is passed, then we will add the team. So we're going to have an on click. Now let's do handle save click. Create a function here. Const handle save click. Okay, so let's go ahead and save the team, and then we'll come back and do the validation. So we are going to say add team, and this is just we're just gonna be passing in the team form. Now, since we destructured team form, let's do this. Let's keep that here. Let's get rid of that. Now let's just destructure team form here. Okay, so I think I'm gonna... Okay, so that should work. I have access to team form, and then I just destructure the properties. I don't want to have to individually put in all the properties there. And let me make sure that is consistent with what the action is expecting. Team reducer, yep. Cool. Okay, so let's give that a try, shall we? I'm going to open the inspect. Have it here. Redux. Okay. So we'll do Chicago Bulls. Let's do Michael Jordan. 23. Shooting guard. Okay, so save team. Looks like it was added. Cool. All the data was added. Now let's look at the state. Okay, 1 second. What am I looking at here? Okay. So teams. Yep. So that is saved now. Perfect. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and add the validations, because those are always required. Let's say I try to save that. Well, that would not be good if there was an empty player. So I'm going to create a function here called validate form. Okay, inside validate form, it's going to return a true or false, basically. And, well, not just true and false, it's going to return an object of all the errors that would be there. Okay, so we need to, say that these fields are required if they're empty. We are going to validate just for the empty string, basically, not too in depth. So we're going to create an errors object, keep it empty. Now, we have the values here destructured, okay? So we're going to just say if city is empty, then we're going to say errors.city is equal to city is. We're going to go ahead and just put the actual error message. And then if team name errors.team name, team name is a required field. Now, the one that we have to do a little bit more work for is the player details. So I'm going to say, I'm going to create a we're going to map over the player details array. So we're going to create a variable here called player detail errors, and do player details, not map. And then okay, do that. And this will just have player detail and then the index. And I'm going to go, I don't even think we need the index here. I'm just going to destructure what's inside the player details. So player name, player position, and then player number. Okay. So so if player name, we're just going to return, and so we're going to create an error object here. So player errors, we will say player errors dot player name is equal to player name is a required field. And I'm just going to copy this. We just got to do it again for player number and player position. Change this to position and change this to number. So the number one is a little bit of a different validation. We need to say if player number, okay, let's fix that, not X. If player number is less than 0 or player number was never changed. So the default we have is an empty string. There we go. Now at the end of that, we will return the player errors. And this is just going to be an array of objects. Only want to return something if, there are any errors. So if there aren't any, then we will just return let's just return like false or something. So because we're going to have to loop over this again and then just see that it's empty. Instead of checking if the object's empty, we'll just check if it's false. So if player, let's just do object.keys dot length, and we're going to do that. Let's do a strict comparison of 0. Now, if that is 0, then we'll return false. Otherwise, we'll return an object. All right. So now we can say, well, if there are, let's check for the length of the player detail errors.length. We are going to add that to the errors object. All right. And then we're going to return errors. Now, here we would say, let's execute that function. So we're going to do const errors validate form. Now we're going to be expecting an object, right? Well, if the object, we need to make sure that the object contains some kind of, what do you call it? Information in there that like, there are errors. So we could check it this way. If object.keys dot length. Okay, so if that's greater than 0, then it'll be true. So we need to also check for if the player detail errors, and then the first in the 0th index is not equal to false. Okay, so the validation on the player detail errors is a little tricky. Now, checking for the dot length, honestly, it's always going to be true because we are returning false. So it could be just an array of false there. Well, what we need to do is actually kind of check again in the loop. We need to loop through and see, okay, so does it actually contain any errors? Which is just going to be an object. So we need to kind of do this differently. Let's see. I'm kind of doing this as we go now. What is the best way? Well, we need to loop through it. So player, we need to see if there's like a function that will let us see what's inside the array without actually explicitly looping through it ourselves. But let's just explicitly loop through it. So it's just going to be an array, right? Player detail errors dot for each. Okay, so what are we going to check in here? So if player detail, all we need to do is check for the type of player detail is equal to an object. Okay, since false is a Boolean, then we will return true. Okay, so for each, so what we want to do is explicitly loop through this. Well, we're going to go to our good old traditional for loop, and I'm going to here say let, let's see, I equal to 0. I is less than player detail errors dot length. Okay, I plus plus. Man, I haven't used one of these in a while. So, if player detail errors I. Okay, all we're checking here is the type. If it's an object, then we know that there's an error, because otherwise we're returning false. So, okay. That means what we're going to do here then is just say errors dot player detail errors equals player detail errors. Break. Otherwise, keep going. Okay. Now, so what that means is in this validation form, validate form, what we call this here, what we need to do is say errors dot So object.keysErrors.length. Yeah, I think that's all we need to check then, because then the other property won't be available. The player detail errors now won't be added if there's no errors. Cool. So now what we need to do is set, have some kind of internal state within this component. So we're going to use useState, and then we are going to create that here. So it should be just a object, and we're going to do form errors, set form errors. And in the here, we're going to say set form errors, and then return, because we don't want to add a team. So once the form errors are set, what we need to do, come into these components. They actually are very useful for showing errors. So here we can say in the team city, we can say error, form error, dot, well, we need to check if it has a property. Okay, and if it does, then we're going to display it. Dot city. So let's give this a try. So it is showing an error. Now we want to show some kind, so error will just kind of highlight that red. If you want to show some text, there's a property called helper text. Form errors dot has own property. Literally the same check. I'm just going to copy that. There we go. So that is what a validation will look like. And it's really easy to add it. I love that. I'm just going to copy this. Keep the same for this. So this will be team name. And the reason how this is returning true or false is if the string is empty, then it's returned as false. It will interpret that as false. So team name. Cool. Perfect. Now for the player form, we need to pass in the form errors. Okay, let's fix this. Okay. Here, I'm going to pass in the form error. Form errors. Okay, so we're gonna go. We're gonna go inside a player form, and then grab form errors. Okay, so the form errors here is going to be an array for the player details. So we need to actually pass. Let's close out of this for now. So we need to have a check here. Well, does it have player detail errors inside the property object? And if it does, then we will pass in player detail errors. Otherwise, we're just going to pass an empty array. Okay, so now that makes it easier for us to come in here and check. I wonder, instead of passing in the array, well, let's pass in false. And then here in the player name, we can just simply say, so error, form error. Now, if form error is not false, okay, so I'm going to have an and statement, and I'm going to say form error So we can already assume that it has a player detail errors key because we're checking for that in the when we pass it down the property. Otherwise, it would be false. So now we're going to say, okay, so we're going to access the index. Okay, so if the index is true, then meaning if there's something inside that index, which is an object, we will access that index and then check for if it has the property of player name. This is super, like, I feel like it's too much, but if you guys have an easier way of doing this, let me know. I would be very interested in knowing. So if it has a property, then we will finally display that. There we go. That is a lot of and statements, but that's what we got to do. So we're going to do the same thing for the helper text. Form errors not defined because I called it form errors. Form error is not defined. Where did I not fix that? Player form 66. I think I fixed it. Yep. Cool. There we go. It's working. I'm going to copy that and do that for here. So all we got to do here is just change it to player number. Copy that. Paste that here. Okay. Copy this once more. And then I believe select also has the same, or I believe there's something else that it has. Okay, so we have to put the error in the form control. And then we're going to change this to player position. And then the text, helper text, will actually be not in here. So if you remember from a long time ago, we added this form helper text. Well, this is for the select. So we're going to come right here, have the form helper text. Okay, and we're going to conditionally render this. Okay, so let's get rid of that. Closing that. Okay, so player position. So if it has a property here, we're going to end that and do a question mark and then display the value there. Or it's just going to be empty string. Oh, perfect. Perfect, perfect. Now let's reset this. We're almost done with that error handling. Okay, cool. It's being added for everything. Awesome. Okay. Well, now, what if you update the value? Well, you want that to disappear, don't you? So I'm going to come back here in team form. So every time we have the on change, this is why I think I kept it separate instead of having one generic function. So we are going to say set form errors. We basically need to reset this part. So we can say previous state. I'm going to grab that previous state there. And then we are going to just set that to an empty string. Okay. And the way we're going to do this is just return the object and then just say use the spread operator to get the previous state, keep the previous state, and then update city to empty string. And I'm gonna do the same for team name. Okay, and this will be team name. Let's give that a try. There we go, perfect. Now for the player change, I believe the player detail change, we are doing that in the player form component. Well, you know what? Let's move this into this component. So that way life is easier for us. Okay? And then we're going to pass this down to the player form. Now it's either doing it this way, or I have to pass down the set form errors function, which honestly, you know what? Does not make a... It's kind of like the same thing, honestly. So I'm going to actually undo what I did there. Sorry, guys. Originally, I actually had it the way I was about to do it. But now that I'm thinking about it, we don't need to do that. We're just going to pass down the update function, which is the set form errors. Have the set form errors here. And then here, what we're going to do. So if we need to have an if condition here, if the what do you call it, form errors has own property. Now we need to check if it's true, which I mean meaning if it's an object, so, and not false. And if form errors that has own property of player error details, player detail errors, then we are going to set the form errors, get the previous state, okay, keep the previous state there. Now we need to update which one has changed. So we can't just, update all of it. We have to update the one that in the array. So player detail errors. And now we're gonna do form errors dot player detail errors dot map. Okay, you guys are probably familiar with this. We've done this before. So we're gonna do player and then index. And then we're gonna just say if index, okay, is equal to the player index, which we're getting from this array here. I mean, from this function here. Well, then we're gonna get rid of the error. Okay, so we're going to update the player. So honestly, let's do this as player error. Really should be player errors. Okay, and then we're going to update the player field. So I kept the keys the same for that exact purpose, and then set it to empty string. Otherwise, we're just going to return player errors. All right. Let's see. Nope. So what I'm going to do is just try refreshing. Could help. Okay, so that is not helping. Let's see if there's any errors here. Okay, these are different errors. Let's see here. Let me think. So form errors, okay? So we are either passing in the player detail error. Okay, let's see then. Got it. So we're already passing in the player detail errors, okay? Honestly, I should have named that player detail errors, but we'll keep it as is. Form errors. Okay, let's give it a try now. Let me refresh. Okay, so why is that not working? Well, let's try to debug it then. We can go into our files here. Components, form, player form. Yeah, let's just debug what's happening. So if I... okay, so form errors. Okay. Oh, it's not... oh, wait. Wait a minute. Okay, so we don't need this. If condition. And also, let's just do a simple check here if it's an object. Okay. If it's an object, I don't think we need this. It should work now. Cool. There we go. All right. Ooh, that is a lot. Oh, now this isn't working. I think I know. Let's see. Did I even add it here? Maybe I add the wrong team key. Yeah, that's what it is. You guys probably noticed that way before. Let's try that. There we go. Cool. Okay, so one thing I need to do here, I don't want to set this if there's no error. So currently it'll set it if there's an error. So in order to check that, we're just going to do if form errors.has own property of city. If it does have that property, okay, then we know that an error exists. And then we'll update that. Same thing here. And then this will be team name. Okay. Cool. So this function won't be called. This won't be called every time we update. All right. Okay, so I think that's getting saved. We just need to do something after. Cool. It's all getting saved as we want. All right, so what do we want to do once save team is clicked and it's, validation passes and it's all good? I think we want to, we want to go back to our original table. So I believe we have a state here. Set is team form shown. And we already have that passed down. So if the save is good, so add team, we just want to call this function. Do I have access to it? Yes, I do. Set this to false. Now, if I hit that, cool. Okay, so our form is done for now. Okay, the one thing that we need to do is be able to update the team if we select one. Let's get this going now. So let's get this select going. Now, let's close this. We have the team select component. So we need to pass in our teams from the Redux store. So let's create a container for the team select. Okay, so I'm going to say import connect from team select, React Redux. Getting way too ahead of myself. And then I'm going to do import the component team select from components team select. Okay, and let's keep that the same. Okay, so we are going to just have state passed here. I don't think we need to pass any dispatch here. So map state to props state. Okay, so let's see. We want to pass in the teams from the team reducer. So we're going to say teams state dot teams. Okay. And yes, that should be what we want. Teams, selected teams, okay. So we also want to pass in the selected team. So state dot selected, state dot teams dot selected teams. Okay, and one thing I just realized is in my team reducer, I put in teams twice. I'm not a fan of that, but instead of going back and changing everything now, I should have realized that before. I'm just going to do state.teams.teams so that we have direct access to this data here. Okay, so export default, connect, map state to props. We're going to leave the dispatch part empty, which is probably going to pass in null. And not connect here. It's going to be team select. Okay, so now in our main, we will be, let's see here. We no longer need the team select component. We will use the team select container from containers team select container. And I think okay, okay. Cool. All right, so here, and now if we go to team select, we will have the teams in the selected team. So teams selected team. Okay, so the value for the select here can be selected team, which will be empty by default. And now the options here, we're going to dynamically create them because it's just an array. So we will have our first option, and then we will also create the other options. Okay, so we'll do if teams.length. Okay, if there are any teams, let's map through them. And then we're going to just return our component of option. Okay, so in the teams, it will have team name, and we'll also grab the city. Okay, and then the option. So here we're going to have the key. We need to set a key since we're looping through it. Will be team name, and then the value will be team name, and then also we're going to do this. So we're going to the value will be different than what we will display. So we're going to use template strings here to concatenate the city and then the team name. And then of course, if it's empty, we will just have an empty string returned. Cool. There we go. Our teams are there. Okay, so now we need to get this data going. In our table, Now I believe we always have empty state here. So what I'm going to do here, the empty state will need to be conditionally rendered. So I'm going to create a component here, which is styled. Sorry, not styled. It is going to be empty data row. Okay. And this is just simply going to return this. And it was complaining at us about the not being inside the table body. So let's go ahead and add that. Okay. So now we need to also create a player table container so that we can pass in the data. This is going to be mostly this is like a read-only table, like there's no actions that you can really do on it. So player table container .js. Okay, and I'm going to do import again of the connect. And then I'm going to import the player table from components, player table, cons, map, state to props, state. Okay, so teams, we're going to be passing in the teams. And so it's state.teams.teams. I hate when that happens. selected team as well, we're going to be passing in, so that if the user wants to just show the players for one team specifically, they can see those only. Okay, so state.teams.selected team. Okay, let's export this. And then connect that to the player table. Okay. So going back to the player table, we got our data that we need now. So we're gonna just destructure it. Teams and then selected team. Okay. So in the table body, we need to kind of check for the length. Okay. So teams.length. Now, if there is something there, we'll return something. If there isn't, what we're going to return is the empty data row. Yeah. So now we're going to loop through this. So we're going to do teams.map. Okay, I'm going to have that. So I'm going to actually get rid of that and keep that like that. Okay, we're going to return the component. So we'll have team name, city, and then player details. Okay, so as you guys know, that player details is also an array. So we need to actually loop through that as well. So it's going to be a nested loop, nested map function, I would say. Player details dot map. Okay, arrow function. This is going to return a component, the components, and then in here, let's destructure and get what we need. Player name, player number, player position. Okay, so in here, we're going to return the table row. Now this is going to need a key, so we'll get the key from here, from the player details. Whoops. Okay, key here will be index. And when we add a backend to this, we'll get a player ID for all this, and that'll be completely unique and a lot better to use for these for the keys of the component. Okay. But, using the index is perfectly fine in this case, since it is unique. Table cell. Okay, so we need to add a couple properties here. This is th. Scope is the row. Okay, in between we're going to say player name. Okay. Teams.length cannot read. Okay, teams is undefined. Teams is undefined. How about we do this? Props. Console.log props. I know it's going to throw an error, but we can see what's in the console. Console was cleared. Okay. Okay, let's just do this. Okay. Let's see. Okay. It is empty. Well, I know what I did wrong, guys. Okay, so I was just playing around. Well, let me undo all this. Okay, so the reason why this is coming up as empty and it's complaining that it cannot read property length of undefined. So in our main, we got to do one thing. So this team select is no longer required. Gonna copy this down. So this is gonna be player table container. Forgot to actually use the container component and was using the normal one. That's why nothing was being passed down to props. So here, this will be the container. Cool. All right. So I'm going to, there's no teams. Let's add a team. Okay. So Bowls is there. And then, so player name. Let's add in the rest of the properties here, and then we'll see how it's looking. So player name. I'm going to just add another table cell. This is going to be, so then team, right? So this is going to be the city. So we're going to use a template string here. City space team name. Oh, what? Team name is an object. This needs to be destructured. Sorry about that, guys. There we go. So, okay, cool. Michael Jordan, now we need to do player number. And then let's copy this once more. And let's do player position. Cool. And let's center align all this. So the way we can do that is pretty straightforward. We just need to add an align property. And just say center. Gonna copy that. Okay, and then I guess I need to align the table cells as well. Cool. And I will leave the first one left aligned. I think that's how they kind of showed in the, I was just trying to copy this kind of. I don't know, it kind of looks weird, but let's see. I'm just gonna center that and then center. Okay, let's just leave it like that. That looks a lot better. So this form data needs to be removed after we hit save team. Okay, so what I want to do next is, let's say I'm gonna add another team. We will get this fixed where we clear the form. Let's do one thing, LeBron James. Okay, so now I want to do one thing. If we select a team, okay, is that actually, I think we already set that up. I think. Nope, no, we didn't. Selected team. So we need to have an action that will update the selected team. So in the actions for the team, we have that already. Update selected team. This will type in team. This will retrieve team. Get the type as update selected team. And then the payload will just be team. Okay, and then this will have update selected team. The team select. So, okay. This is an action, right? So we need to get this in the container. Okay, I said that we wouldn't have any dispatch actions. Well, I was wrong about that. Map dispatch to props. Okay, so we're gonna need to import the actions. Actions, team actions, update selected team, copy that. Dispatch, update, let's paste that. And then this will take in param. So this will have a param, which is just going to be team name. We'll pass in team name. And let's add map dispatch to props. Okay. So in the team select, we will have this function now, update selected team. And then we'll have an onChange function here. So we will say update selected team. And then we'll have the event here. And we'll say event dot target dot value. Okay, so now let's see that the state is getting, yep, it sure is selected team. Well, we're calling it, but nothing's being passed. I think it's because the value itself is just being passed and not we don't need an event. Okay, so selected team is still... Okay, it does seem to be having the event. So then... Okay, so the bulls is there. Oh man, I bet I didn't even add it to the reducer, did I? Nope. Okay, makes sense. Turn state, and then select a team will be action.payload. Let's try that again. Is it still not? What? Let me do something here. Let's get rid of these. Okay. Doing something wrong here. Okay, looks like I just needed to refresh the page. What a bummer. I refreshed it and now it's working. You can see the selected team. Yeah, so the only bummer about having to refresh the page is we always lose our data. Once we have a backend, that will not be the case. So, okay. So the reason now we have this here. Now, if there is a selected team, we want to give the user the option to edit the team. Okay. So what we're going to do here is say selected. I don't think I'm even passing. Wait, I have to be. Selected team. Yep. Selected team. I don't know why it's not there. It is. Selected team. If that has a value, we're going to say edit team. Otherwise, we're going to say add team. Okay, so let's try that. Okay. Need to add some data. Okay, so that is, am I not getting the value? Yeah, I should be getting the value. Let me see. I said selected teams instead of selected team. Oh, that's a bummer. Cool. So here you guys can see we can edit the team now. Now we're going to have to do a little bit of changing up the form so that we can pre-populate the value if the team is being edited. We don't want, if we go in here now. Well, okay, hold on 1 second. It's just not clearing up like we needed to. We'll get that going. But whenever that edit team happens, we need this to be pre-populated with the data that's there. So whenever this button is clicked, we're going to need to create an action for that. We're going to call that populate team form. So that will populate either the default state or the state of the team that already is there and just pre-populated. So the populated team forms will need to be created in the team actions. And this is just, okay, so let's talk this through. If it's edit team, yeah, we'll grab all the existing data. If it's a new team, we need to clear this data up and use the initial state. Okay. So in our team actions, we will add in, this is the container, team form actions. Okay, let's add in a constant here saying populate team form. Okay. So now in the action, team form actions, we'll create a function here. Populate team form, team data. And then, so what we're going to pass in is the team name, basically. So we'll check if the team name exists. We're going to pass in the team data. So the team data will be basically the team name. If what we're going to do is we'll check whenever the team is selected, and let's say we'll do edit team, we'll check and see, okay, does that team exist in our Redux store? If it does, then we'll populate all the details of the form with that. And if it doesn't, then we're just going to pass in, if selected team is empty, that means add team is there, right? So we're just going to pass in empty data, which means that it's just going to use the initial state. All right, so let's do that in action. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Up populate, and then payload team data. And let's do a better name. I'm going to do team name because that's what we're expecting. It is not team name because we are going to filter it. And if there is a team name that exists, then we're going to pass in the whole data point. Okay. So let's do populate team form. Okay, so that is set up. Let's go into our reducer. So in our team form reducer, we will have a populate team form case. So we will say populate team form if the action.payload, okay, is equal to undefined. Okay, so this is what I mean. If we don't find the team name, meaning if they click on add team, then we won't pass in anything to the function. It'll just be undefined. We will just return all the other state, and then the so we will pass in the initial state, basically. Okay, so we're gonna do what is the best way? The key. Okay, we need to go in here and do everything. So it'll be team name. We need to do initial state dot team name. Now I could do explicitly do empty string, but I want to just keep it whatever the initial state is. In case it does get changed on, we don't have to come back here and change it ourselves. And then player details will just be an empty state. Sorry, it will be an initial state dot player details. And this needs a comma here. Okay. And otherwise, if there is a team that we're editing, then we will return the state, and then return the, let's see, we will return, and this will be action.payload.city, team name, action.payload.team name. And then this will be player details, action.payload.player details. Okay. And you know, I think now that I'm thinking about it, this is, I don't like the way that we have to explicitly go into each property and, set it. I would have probably grouped this, these things into like another key, so that and had this as an object, so that whenever we have things like this, we can just set the whole key to the value of the action.payload. But that's okay. This is a pretty small form, but just wanted to throw that out there. Okay, so now in the team select, I'm going to get rid of this console.log. Now we need to handle this add team. We need to change how it's being. Okay, so this we need to create a function for here. Let's call it handle team button click. Okay, and then we're going to say if selected team, if it's not empty, we're gonna, okay, we need to, I think we're passing down, no we're not. We need to grab populate team form. Okay, call that here, populate team data, dispatch, populate team form, get the team data in there. Okay, so if there's a selected team, we will have the function here, populate team form. Okay, and we will in here say teams.filter, and we're going to have a team. So each individual team, we're going to have the team name. So if that is equal to the selected team, we will grab the value of that from the filter. Okay, so the selected team, the value of that each one is just the team name. If I'm not mistaken, it should just be the Lakers here. Yep. So the team name will just be Lakers, and they'll return that, and they'll pass it down to populate team form. Otherwise, or we'll have an else if the selected team, if there's not a selected team, then I'm just going to say populate team form. And then after that, we need to set the team form shown equal to true. Okay, so now we need to add this here. Perfect. Now let's give that a try. Probably going to need to refresh the page, unfortunately. Okay. Okay, so if I add the team, cool. So let's see that it's actually working because we are doing it ourselves. Yep, it is resetting the data. And then let's go back. Let's come back here. And let's go into the Lakers. Let's do edit team. And it did not do that. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so let's see what it passed into the payload. I mean, it passed in everything. Let's go into the reducer. Source, store, reducers, team reducer. Team forms reducer, actually. Populate. Let's come back here. Let's edit team. Oh man, misspelled payload. It's always something that small. Team form. Okay, let's try that again. Still didn't work. I'm gonna have to refresh. Okay. Perfect, guys. Perfect. Let's go ahead and add this. Okay, so it looks like it's adding it. It's like duplicating the thing. So we'll fix that. Okay, and then this is not correct. It did not update. Okay, let's see. Populating the team forms. How come it did not? So did it not save? Oh, whenever we save. Okay, let's see. I think I know what's going. Yeah, there's two bowls. That's why. We need to save into the existing one. So let's get that handled. We need a different action, and that is going to be the called up. Let's call that update team. Sorry, not here. It will be in the team reducer. Yeah, that's why we have update team already. Okay. All right, so in update team, we will get all the previous state, and then we'll do teams, and then we'll do state.teams.map. Okay, and then we're going to do team. Okay, So we're going to be passing in something from the payload, obviously, to signify, what is the ID to see if the current, what team we're updating. Okay. So the ID is going to be the team city concatenated with a dash in the team name. So it'll look like something like this. So if team.city team.team name is equal to action.payload.id. Okay, so if that is true, we're going to return the action.payload.data because it's already there, the team data in the payload. And if it's not true, then we're just going to return team. Okay. All right, so that is update team. We need the action now. Okay, so we're going to have an update team and add team. So we're going to have to choose those functions based on whether we're updating or adding a new one, okay? So, and that will be coming from here. Okay, so we'll have team action types, okay? Which we already have update team. We need to create the function though. Yep. Const update team. And then this will pass in the team data. Type update team payload, and then we'll have the team data here. Okay, and this team data will consist of the ID and then the actual data. Okay, let's go ahead and export that. Okay. So the update team is, sorry, I know we also mentioned we had an ID. So it's going to be the ID and then the team data. So then in the payload, we'll have the ID and the team data here. Okay, so let's make sure it matches our reducer. Action.payload.id, action.payload.team data. Cool. Okay, so that is there. We have that set up now in our team select. Now we are, no, not in the team select, sorry. Now we need to go to our team form. So in our handle save click function, we need to have a check here. So we need to see if there's a selected team, and we don't have that. So we can go to our container. This is the beauty of Redux, where we can just say selected team state dot teams dot selected team. We can now have the selected team here. And we're going to check in the click handle save click function if there is a selected team. Update team is going to be our function. And let me see if I made sure there's an add team. We need an update team as well. And this should not have been imported. Okay, so this will take in an ID. So the ID we're going to actually just on the fly create. It's going to be the city. And then it's going to be the team name. Okay, and then we're going to have the form data team form. And then else we'll have what we had before. Okay, let's see how this works. Gonna refresh this. create a new team. Okay, so let's go ahead and edit the team. Add a player. All right, so update team is not a function. Let's see. They are correct. I never did add it here. There are so many steps to whenever you need to add this. I guess sometimes, you forget if you're just going through the flow of things. Okay. Update team. This is going to take an ID and then team data. Dispatch. Update team. ID and team data. Okay. So let's try that again, shall we? Perfect, guys. So as you can see here, it did not add another Bulls team. It simply just updated the one that we had in our teams. Alright, so let's go ahead and try adding a new team. Cool. And then we'll have the Lakers, edit them. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Now, I wanted to show you, I think we're getting close to being done, actually. That was a lot. If you have made it through this long, I really appreciate it. I just hope you got something out of it. That's what I really want. I just want to give and, give knowledge of this. So, whenever we have the Bulls or Lakers selected, let's go ahead and filter it so that we can only see that team, because this list could get really long. So we'll go to the table, and let's see, we already have selected team, which is perfect. Now let's see, we need to go ahead and filter. Okay, I'm going to create a team data variable called and set that equal to teams. And then if selected team is true, if it has a value, I'm going to say team data is equal to teams.filter team, and then just see if the selected team is equal to team.teamName. So then here we'll replace teams with team data, and then this with team data, and that should be it. Let's see. Now, all right, perfect. I really think that is it. I think, one thing we didn't do is I didn't add a max for the number of players. Let's go ahead and do that real fast. Nothing, major, but it's good that we don't have, 200 players to a team. I think the max is like 15 in the NBA. I could be wrong, but let's just go ahead and add that. So we will add that in the player form. So the, should it be in the team form? Because the add player button is here. It is down here, right? Okay. So we need to see the length of the team form dot player details array. So team form. So we're going to say disabled team form dot length equal to 15. Sorry, it's not team form dot length. It's team form dot player details dot length. Let's give that a try. So I don't even know what we're at, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Cool. Awesome. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Perfect, guys. All right, I think that is actually the end of this tutorial. So let's go ahead and add let's do some proper data here. Let's see, Brooklyn Nets. They just got James Harden. I don't know his, oops. Just notice one thing. That number should be, let's see. In the team form, player form, we have text field number. Do we need to add a type here? Yeah. So if I try entering a letter here, it won't let me. So I'm just going to do 3. Shooting guard. Okay. So, perfect, guys. This is actually the end of the tutorial. I hope I didn't miss anything that I wanted to present, but I really hope that this provided some value to you guys. I know it was super long, and I really didn't intend on it being so long, but next video that I'm going to do is actually a continuation of this, and I'm going to add this to a backend. So when we do save team here, it will actually save it to the backend, and I'm probably going to use Express and MySQL, and I'll show you how to do all that, so that whenever we do get the data here, it's going to be coming in from our backend, and it'll be populated here. So yeah, stay tuned for that, guys. If you guys did get some value out of this, please do subscribe and like this video. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.